2013. This year also marks 10 years since its launch. But what exactly is the BRI? Trix Ngado explains.
To understand the Belt and Road Initiative, we have to start with a bit of history. Recently changed from the One Belt, One Road Initiative, the project is modeled after an ancient trade route known as the Silk Road. This was an ancient Chinese economic belt that connected Asia to Europe, thus the word belt. Road, on the other hand, is the infrastructural part of the initiative set up by China's President Xi Jinping in 2013. BRI is China's way of strengthening its diplomatic ties, promoting trade and cross-border partnerships. Key BRI partners are connected through road networks, sea routes and road infrastructural projects. It also includes hospital projects and people-to-people exchange. According to the Chinese Foreign Ministry, over the past decade, China has signed documents for the co-building of the BRI with over 150 countries and 30 international organizations. It says more than 3,000 cooperation projects under the initiative have delivered nearly $1 trillion of investment and generated growth across partner countries. Actors belong to low, middle and high economic groups. Some major partners in Africa include Kenya, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Ghana, Uganda, just to name a few. In the East African region, some of the key infrastructural projects include Kenya's standard gauge railway line, flagged off on the 31st of May 2017 by former President Uhuru Kenyatta, that stretches from the coastal city of Mombasa to Nairobi. Nairobi-Naivasha Expressway, Kipevu Oil Terminal, Nairobi Expressway, Lamu-Lokichara Crude Oil Pipeline, among others. In Uganda, Kampala-Entebbe Express Highway, Karuma Hydropower Project, Entebbe International Airport, among others. In Tanzania, Bagamoyo Port Phase 5 and Mwanza Isaka SGR section, among others. In South Sudan, the Juba International Airport is one of the projects. Kenya has participated in all the Belt and Road summits and has promised to be part of the third summit expected this month, a move that has been welcomed by China. Trix Ngado, KTN News.
Now, to shed more light on the ambitious Belt and Road Initiative, we spoke to Dr. Kavins Adere, an international relations scholar and expert on China-Africa relations.
Belt and Road Initiative is actually a foreign policy initiative that was launched by Chinese leader President Xi Jinping in 2013. The initiative was a way for China to contribute to global development in the sense that it allowed China to share the proceeds of its development with partner countries around the world. Now, Belt and Road Initiative has since emerged as the strongest platform of international collaboration, certainly mooted by China, but increasingly accepted by other countries. It is implemented through 4 pillars, one of which is infrastructure construction. And then we have trade. Then we have the element of policy coordination. The 4th one is financial inclusion. And the final one is actually on people-to-people, relations. So across the 4 pillars of Belt and Road Initiative, a lot of discussion has happened around infrastructure construction because it's the most dominant, it's the most visible component. Because if you see a road, you see a road. You cannot hide a railway. But there are other softer elements of BRI that are working in concert to give it the relevance that it has gained, over time in the last 10 years since it was promulgated. China is the largest developing country in the world, and Africa is home to the largest number of developing countries. Because of the Chinese development outcomes, many countries, especially here in Africa, have thought that China offers them a model of economic transformation. And that is why many African countries signed on to the Belt and Road Initiative when it was rolled out. Today, I think 52 African countries out of 54 actually hold cooperative agreements with China to implement Belt and Road Initiative, including the African Union. And that tells you the level of popularity, the level of acceptability, and the level of partnership that African countries collectively through African Union, but also bilaterally or individually, have gone into with China to implement Belt and Road Initiative. Many countries that are interested in implementing Belt and Road Initiative are driven by the fact that it offers them an opportunity to kind of get the win-win or mutually beneficial gains working with China. And not just with China, because Belt and Road now offers opportunity for participating countries to even work together. And talking about win-win, African countries, I think in my view, have been very big beneficiaries of Belt and Road Initiative. Through this project, we've seen a number of infrastructure modernization, talking about railways. China has managed to build over 6,000 kilometers of railways in Africa, 6,000 kilometers of road networks in Africa. We also have over 130, hostels and 170 schools that have been built by China as a result of this across the continent. China has also helped Africa modernizing its transport sector, including airports, including seaports, and also telecommunication. 70% of Africa's internet and connectivity infrastructure have been put up by China in the last decade, thanks to the Belt and Road Initiative, as well as other complementing cooperative agreements. So I think there has been a lot of gains for Africa. Similarly, on the level of trade, China is Africa's largest trade partner for 14 years in a row. Countries like Kenya, which are now in a comprehensive strategic partnership with China. Kenya is just one of the 5 countries that have comprehensive strategic partnership with China. And the idea is to try and tap into the Chinese development experience, tap into the proceeds of China's development, including technology and finances. China, for a large part, has been the biggest development financier for African projects, as well as construction, the supply of construction services. African countries find Chinese firms to be very efficient in terms of implementing infrastructure. And for long, they've been looking forward to working with these Chinese firms. But that's just on the African side. This has also, delivered for China. We look at, for example, internationalization of Chinese firms. When they come to Africa, they are able to showcase what they can do. It has offered Chinese companies opportunity to invest outside China. And so today, for example, in Kenya, we have over 400 Chinese firms that are investing here, employing over 50,000 Kenyan people. In terms of trade, China has also access to resources that are found in Africa that's critical for its industrial development. But on the political consultation level, the two sides have also agreed to work together, to really promote closer collaboration at bilateral, multilateral levels, including within the UN system. Every good thing has its silver lining, but also at its probably some criticism. Belt and Road Initiative certainly has received a lot of criticism. But interesting, that criticism is not coming from Chinese partners. It's not coming from African countries. Interestingly, it's coming from other partners of Africa who may have wished to realize the gains that China and its development partners around the world are realizing. So one of the claims about BRI is on debt, that China is, for example, working to put African countries or developing countries in unsustainable debts. Yes. But I think this is, the facts are not in favor of these assertions. Take a country like Kenya. Only about 9% of Kenya's total external debt is owed to China. So that means even if China was to be paid its money by Kenya, the whole of it, Kenya will still have a 90% rate bill to, debt burden to deal with. So we wouldn't say, for example, that China is responsible for Africa's debt. The second pointer is that according to the World Bank, just about 12% of Africa's external debt is owed to Chinese lenders. In contrast, 35% is owed to Western, lenders. So this argument that somehow China, through Belt and Road Initiative, is pushing African countries or developing countries generally into debt is not proven by the obtaining facts. The other option is, even if you look at it in terms of the interest rate that are charged by Chinese lenders versus the interest rates charged by Western lenders, the Chinese banks are, offering their loans at an average of 2.7% compared to 5% from the Western countries. So, given that, the Western, sources account for 3/4 of Africa's, external debt, it therefore means that, in my view, China doesn't have a debt problem when it comes to its development partnership with African countries. However, I think what needs to be said is that because of certain prevailing conditions, which are maybe national and global, such as the global health crisis, the COVID-19, the impacts of climate change, certain countries have found it difficult, not just even the most developed countries have found it difficult to service their debts. The US, for example, has had a very difficult period in terms of sustaining the government operations. Remember, just last few days, they've had a challenge in terms of running government functions. Why? Because of the economic performance due to these external challenges. So this has also had an effect on developing countries. So because of that, many countries are indeed have a problem of servicing their debt. But this has nothing to do with China. It has to be looked at in a bigger context of what is happening in terms of economic prevailing factors, as well as other aggravating factors such as climate change. Belt and Road has offered countries an opportunity to work together. The forum that is coming up in Beijing will give these partners a chance to review what has happened and probably come up with more sustainable ways going into the future, because Belt and Road is not ending today, and more countries are willing to tap into the economic opportunities that arise out of this partnership. I'm very glad that Kenyan leader President William Ruto is expected in Beijing to attend this forum. Kenya has participated in the last two forums on Belt and Road. And this is important. Why? Because Kenya is a very important country, for example, in the implementation of Belt and Road in Africa. Kenya is a landing node for the East African region and has been identified as the most successful country among African countries in terms of implementing BRI. So a lot of opportunities and a lot of projects have been realized under this in Kenya. The SGR, the Nairobi Expressway. We have a lot of activity around modernization of our ports, infrastructure, including construction of a deep sea port in Lamu. We have the Global Trade Center that offers a new opportunity for Kenya to revolutionize its tourism as well as business ecosystem. So I think that by Kenya elevating this relationship, by attending this forum, it offers the two countries an opportunity to reimagine what could happen. You're aware that Kenya is thinking about a lot of other infrastructure projects, including modernizing our airport at JKIA, expanding some of these roads, including dualling of Rironi, I think Mau Summit Road. And this is an opportunity for our leaders to engage in constructive dialogue with the Chinese leadership to see how best to harness the proceeds of BRI, not just here in Kenya, but also for the African region. As you know, Kenya is a transshipment hub, so to speak. And what happens in Kenya has a ripple effect on the regional economies, but also the economies of Africa as a whole. There are a number of pillars. Infrastructure is the most discussed, but there are a number of pillars of Belt and Road Initiative. So you talk about trade, for example, Kenya-China trade relations, and we saw Kenya becoming the first country in Africa to export fresh avocados in China in August last year. And just 3 months after that deal, Kenya exported avocados worth $50 million. And that means beneficial outcome for our farmers over here. This year, Kenya also became, I think, the first country to export fresh anchovies, locally known as omenas, to China. So I think there is opportunity. It's allowing Kenya, it's allowing other African countries to upgrade their trade relations with China. And the beauty of this, that helps to reduce the trade imbalance that exists between China and Kenya and other African countries. The second component has got to do with these people-to-people ties. China has emerged, for example, as the favored destination for African students seeking higher education. Young Kenyans, before COVID, China was the most popular destination for them. Just this August, I think we saw flagging off of tens of Kenyan students who've gone to China on government scholarship to study in different fields. In terms of cultural exchanges, we've seen, the Confucius Institutes opening in about 4 universities in Kenya. We are also seeing emergence of Confucius classrooms in certain high schools in Nairobi and outside Nairobi. What it does is that it exposes Kenyans to the Chinese language and culture, makes it easy for Chinese and Kenyans to work together, and even Kenyans to tap into the opportunities that have been brought about by Chinese firms that are operating in Kenya. In terms of political consultation, we've seen a lot of political activity between Kenya and the Chinese side. Just this year alone, we had 2 foreign ministers of China visit Kenya. In January, we had Qinggang, and in July, we had Wang Yi, who came over to have discussions with President William Ruto. A number of Kenyan cabinet secretaries, including the Transport Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen, have also had a chance to visit China. Recently, I think the Interior PS, Raymond Omolo, was in China for a security meeting. And this offers an opportunity for the two sides to collaborate, to discuss ways through which political inclusion and dialogue can take place before even these other forms of collaboration. So I believe that there is a lot of opportunity that exists for Kenya and China, for China and Africa, in terms of how to move this collaboration forward. What needs to be done, for example, is to retweak the approaches to embrace new models like private-public partnerships that do not necessarily enhance debt, but at the same time deliver value for the people. To invest in productive sectors such as manufacturing, technology transfer, and to ensure that our people get the knowledge they need. But the Chinese firms also have an opportunity to internationalize and come and operate in countries like Kenya.